On. And I'll just admit those as they come through. Okay. Welcome to session 10 on electronic approvals with workflow management. So, just to sort of see where we're at in terms of your implementation. So, we essentially park the rest of the admin sessions now until we get closer to go live. So, from here, we'll focus on your project management and accounting modules. So today's session, it's essentially to give you an understanding of how workflows work within Premiere, and we'll follow a real demo. So we hope that that post this session, you'll have the skills to be able to go away and set up your workflows in your Premiere environment. Specifically, your two workflows being your AP invoice and PO workflows. But then you also might want to think about whether you need the likes of your subcontracts and deeds of release set up. So just out of curiosity, does anyone want to share high level what their invoice or PO approvals or workflows look like at the moment? Are they in the system? Are they manual outside? And do you have any like dollar approval limits? Does anyone want to share?
Ours are currently outside of the system.
Mm.
When we're letting a contract or a purchase order in the first place, we go through an approval system where the CAs will sort of assess the package, and then it'll come to the project manager to review and sign off on. If it's a value over $30,000, we then send it up for our construction manager to approve and send and sign off on as well before we send out the purchase order or subcontract.
And how
The purchase
does that
orders,
signing actually happen? Like, is it just on a
it's
piece of paper
on
or?
a piece of paper.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
right.
all the background paperwork's usually just left in our share folder for us to actually access, but then we've just got one piece of physical paper that we all sign off on so that we can scan back in.
Mm-hmm.
So that way it captures all three signatures, the CA, the project manager, and the construction manager.
Yep.
And then with the purchase orders and contracts themselves, the CAs do those up. And depending on the risk of them, they'll often just send them out.
Mm-hmm.
Most contracts, however, they usually then let the project manager know that it's the contract's in the folder just for us to cast our eye over. And then we pop our signature on it and send out.
Okay. Excellent. Oh, well, thank you for sharing that, Lindsay. That's great.
Right.
All right. A good tip, I guess, before starting out your workflows in Premiere is to kind of visualize what your process looks like now. So, like, write it out on a piece of paper, really look at what your current process is now. And if you need to make any changes, get that in place now before we go live. So, sort of try to sort of work out if you can change some of those processes. Obviously, this session will really open you up as to um, uh, what's physically possible within Premiere, and then you can amend it from there. All right, so the agenda today, we'll look at the workflow approval options you have available in your system. We will demo a couple of items and give you some hints and tips as we go, and we'll review some critical screens related to workflows. So there are essentially two places within Premiere where you'll be able to access documents or items that relate to workflows, that being your job dashboard and your approval inbox. So you might remember from the users session that we recommend turning on your approval inbox so that the first time you log in, you'll be presented with this screen. And it's a really handy tool to see items that need your approval or action, because it'll essentially put them in these little buckets here. And these are hyperlinks. So as soon as you click on the relevant circle, it will take you to that area of the software. Then with the job dashboard, so if you're a PM, you might use this screen heavily. And within this dashboard, you'll notice that there's an area where it says awaiting for approval. Now with this, you might notice up the top, we can filter on all, me, or other. So again, this is all hyperlinked. So you'll be able to click on the items and it will navigate to that area of the software. So with workflows, you essentially have two options. So the first being what we call internal routing workflows, and the second is what we call collaborative or external workflows. The difference between these is basically the functionality of what you can and cannot do. So internal workflows means that it's based on a particular user or a role. So the two workflows where we don't go to a third party will be the likes of your AP invoices and your POs. So they will only be routed internally for your team to approve these. So think of a simple example in the CA entered a particular invoice, then they're sending it to the PM for approval. The PM approves it and the invoice is automatically posted. The external workflow, however, will allow you to tap into that electronic signature approval. So you can forward these documents out to your vendors to sign. And the most commonly would be like the likes of your subcontracts or your variations. So what might happen is the CA enters a subcontract, they send it to the PM for approval. Then it goes to the vendor for signing and then comes back to the PM for countersigning. And then the final signed version of the document gets forwarded out to all the parties. So now let's look specifically at the internal workflow for AP approvals. So what would generally happen is first we receive the invoice, we enter the invoice, and then we have the capability to send that for approval. The approver can then approve or reject the invoice. And then once the invoice has gone through the approval process, it will automatically post and then it becomes ready for payment. Is there any questions before I move on? Okay, so let's
I'm
look at an,
assuming
yeah,
I'm assuming there's a spot where you make comments on the invoice or something goes back to someone, or is it
yeah,
just a straight?
you can certainly make comments on some of these. Emily might be able to step in and give more of an explanation to these, though.
Sure, yeah. As you go through the process, so when you're raising this
Mhm.
and it's sent for approval, you're able to actually, yeah, at certain times it'll allow you the ability, say for example, reviewer approves, rejects, and there you can add notes if you wanted to put something in there at that particular point in time. So as we go through examples, you'll be able to see, yeah, there's options, opportunities to put those in as you go through. Does that help answer the question?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
Thank
then
you.
let's have a look at another example of a internal workflow. So being your POs, it's much the same so that when we create the PO, we can then route for approval. The approver either approves or rejects the PO, and the PO then automatically posts. And then when the last approver does their little bit, you can actually set this up so the PO is just marked off as essentially completed or have them prompted like send this out to the vendor. So let's go into the system and have a look at how we set up an AP approval, AP invoice workflow. So as always, I'm using a training environment. So we want to find the screen called workflows. So you can always use your side menus if you want to find any of these screens. I just generally tend to stick to the quick search once I know what those screens are. So yeah, just bear in mind that we're in training. Nothing in here is any real data or anything like that. Okay, now because I'm in a training environment, you'll see that I already have some workflows in here, but your system is going to be brand new and won't have anything set up. So as a starting point, we recommend to set up a baseline type workflow. And then as time goes by, you might separate things out, tweak these, or make them more dynamic. Now, up the top of this screen, we have a workflow drop down where you can essentially select your various forms that you might have workflows attached to them. So you might notice that we've got deeds of release, we've got purchase orders, subcontracts, submittals, timesheets, all of that sort of thing in there. Then once we've selected our particular type, you might find that we also have this distribution type. Now, if we're looking at, say, AP invoices, we have a distribution type for job, being what happens to the invoices when they're coded to an actual job. Then we have the likes of our general ledger. So think of these as what might happen to that invoice if it's, say, coded to overheads, it's not linked to a job or anything like that. And then if I switch to, say, subcontracts, you will notice that there is no distribution type. And this is because it will only ever be that one type, being that it will always be a job type distribution. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's flick back to the AP invoices. So to add a workflow, we simply need to click on Add, and then we recommend that you are calling your baseline workflow, say, all invoices. Then you would navigate to the Conditions tab below and make sure that everything is set to all. So the idea of what we're essentially trying to do here is create a catch-all scenario. So we want to catch every single invoice under every different category. So everything is going to come to here. Then we click on the routing tab and we would set up our options in here. Now I'm going to clear this because we've already got one with all invoices and it's got the same conditions, so it won't allow me to save it. So I'm just going to clear it and then I'm going to come to this one that I've already have set up and look at the routing tab in here. So when I click on the routing tab, you can see here that we've got a sequence set up where that it goes to the PM to approve it. We then have another sequence where, say, if the invoice is greater than 20,000, it's going to then route to the project accountant. And then if it's over 100,000, it is also then going to route to the executive project manager. And then if the invoice is then greater to 250,000, it's going to route to Michael Jenke. So we can actually use a combination of roles and particular users. We do, however, recommend that you use roles as much as possible because that gives you more flexibility and less administration as people will naturally resign from your business and you don't want to have to keep changing your workflows to update those names. Make sense? Okay, let's go over to the job screen.
How does that work if someone then goes on leave for that particular project?
Good question.
So, for example, if there's a workflow set up and it goes from the contracts administrator to the project manager for approval, but the PM's away for a week or something,
good question.
can you do a temporary override?
Yeah, so I'll go through this in a little bit later in the session, where essentially we can do delegate approvals. So just park that for a little minute and hopefully I'll answer that by the time we finish the session. But very good question.
Thanks.
Okay, so when we go to the job screen, and let's just say I find job 2503, what we can do is we can click on this contacts tab in here. And this is where you would then nominate the users in that role. So if I go back, we're looking at the roles of project manager, project accountant, and executive project manager. We don't need to do this one because it's routed to the actual user themselves. So for the sake of the system knowing who these people are, is that we then come down into here and we can go, okay, the executive project manager in this case might be Ernest. What else are we looking at? The executive project manager, we got the project accountant. So we can come in here, find project accountant, and that might be, say, Emily. And so that's essentially how the system then knows who's linked to these particular roles when it's looking at these workflows. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so let's go back to our approval workflows. So we obviously recommend that as this workflow is only related to job invoices, that you then also do the same thing and flick it over to your general ledger. And let's go straight to, say, the routing tab on this particular case. So we can then see that, okay, for all overhead invoices, it's going to go to Ernest first. If it's greater than 50,000, it's going to go to Emily. And if it's greater than 100,000, it's going to Robin. So you'll notice here that the only difference is that these are not job related invoices. So we cannot use roles. So in this particular case, we are using the actual users themselves. We also recommend that this auto post upon last approval is ticked, and this is good to have turned on. Otherwise, what you'll need to do is every single time that someone is manually approving invoices, you'll also need to go and manually post those. So this is a really handy tool in that it can essentially save some administration and avoid a step that's required. So if we have an invoice worth 10K, because it's less than 50, it will go to Ernest and it won't go any further. It will just auto post and then it will be able to be picked up, ready for payment at another time. Okay, let's see this in action. So this is no means a session on how to enter AP invoices. You'll have sessions on this later on, but I essentially want to try to sort of demonstrate how this works. So what I'm going to do is go to the screen, New AP Invoices. I'm going to enter a very generic overhead style invoice really quickly here for you. Not going to link it to the job. So this distribution type being G, so this then tells this workflow to follow our general ledger style of workflows. Then I'm just entering into my distribution. So maybe it's some office amenities and maybe it's only $50 worth. So then when I send this batch for approval, okay, so you'll notice that the approval status is sitting in pending and the status of my invoice is also sitting as pending. So what I could then do is go to my pending AP invoices screen. I could find my batch. So I'm just going to do a refresh of my drop downs. I can pick up that relevant invoice. I can click on the approval log and I can see what has happened to it so far. So we can sort of see, okay, it is now sitting in pending approval and it's against me. Now, the other thing I could do is I could also go to my approval inbox. And you'll now see that I have one AP invoice awaiting for my approval. So we do recommend that this is turned on as the screen that you open essentially as soon as you open Premiere. How do you do that? Just a reminder, you go to your preferences under your initials and you turn on Startup Open Inbox screen. So turn that on. Good tip. Okay, so then when I click on this, because it's a hyperlink, it will take me to my Approve AP Invoices screen. And now if I just flick back to my workflow screen, you might have noticed that I actually had other workflows set up. So, and I coded that particular invoice to office amenities. So how did it know to avoid Ernest and come to me? So that's where I click on office amenities. If I just tab over to the conditions, I can see that instead of having all the way down, I've actually nominated that when someone codes an invoice to account 6310 being office amenities, my routing is to go to Melita and no further. So that's why we do suggest doing a catch-all first, and then you might be able to tailor specific things to go to other people. And if there is no specific workflow, it will default up to here and follow this workflow. Any questions on that? Okay, so let's go back to my approve AP invoices screen. So once it comes in to me, what I can do is I can open it up. I can check that it's all coded correctly. If the person entering the invoice had have actually attached a copy of the invoice itself, I'd be able to see that under the Documents tab. If I noticed something was wrong with this invoice, like say like the amount was typed wrong or something like that, I could totally fix all of that up, or I could just simply reject it and send it back. Once I'm happy with the invoice, I can then just go ahead and approve. This is where I can enter any notes or comments. Click OK. And then if I open my posted AP invoices screen, I can then filter on to here, so we can actually filter at the job level, or I can just go all, filter for my vendor. I can see my invoices in here, and I can click on the approval log, and you can see, okay, Melita has approved it, and now the invoice is automatically posted it as well. Any questions to that? Okay, I'm going to shut down some of these screens. Okay, let's go back to the slides. And I've just got a last, someone have jumped out and come back in. Just one moment, just approving someone entering the room. Okay, so we've gone through this. So let's have a look at a workflow attached to electronic signatures. So remember, this is your external workflows. So this example is going to demo what you can potentially do with your subcontracts. So the steps are a little bit different in essentially the CA will draft up a subcontract, and then they might send it internally for approval. So the PM approves the subcontract. They can do it by their mobile phone if they want to. The subcontract and the document could then go externally to, say, the subcontract or the vendor. They receive it for physical signing. Then it could come back to the PM for countersigning, and then all parties could receive a copy of the fully executed document. Okay, so let's go back to Premiere. And we want to flick this over now to subcontracts. So again, we recommend that once again, you set up a baseline, capture all type sort of scenario. We generally advise against clients setting up job specific workflows, as this creates a lot more complexity and admin burden. So we want to keep it as simple as possible. The only time I recommend job specific workflows is, say you have a large job dealing with big values and you might want to have set up, say, 2 approvers for that sort of scenario. So that's when we could come into the conditions tab. We could create a new workflow and attach it to a particular job, and then we could route it to 2 different PMs for approval. So the same thing for all invoices, in that when we set up, firstly, we do our catch-all scenario. We want all the conditions here to be marked as all, being that it will capture everything, and then you can create your job-specific ones. Now, just also a note that if you do job-specific ones, never ever have the PM specifically selected as well as the job. The reason for that is that when you set up the job and you assign your PM, the system already knows who the PM is. So, and if either the workflow or the job PM name is wrong by having it specifically set up on a PM and on the job, it's going to get confused. Anyway, so let's move on. So we've got a catch-all scenario, and when we click on our routing tab, we can then see that in this we have the subcontract going to the PM to approve it. So see how it's got the action required. We can drop this down and change it from approve to sign. Then it's going to go to the vendor project manager for signing, and then lastly coming back to the PM for countersigning. Now, you might be wondering, where do I put this vendor project manager? So that's set up on the actual subcontract. So let me just find my subcontract screen. Again, this is not a session on how to create subcontracts or anything like that. We can filter on our various job. So let's have a look at the latest one in here. 2502 has some jobs in that, subcontracts in there. And then what you'll notice is on the main tab, if I just scroll down a little bit, see this vendor project manager. So we've got a subcontract going to Big River Landscaping. And you might remember from our contact session is that you can set up additional contacts against this particular company. So I'll give you just a really quick refresh. Might help if I can spell. So if I was to say set up, who are we dealing with? Big River Landscaping. I could come into here. I could click on add. I could click Big River Landscaping in here, and I can sort of set up an additional contact against that, which then allows me when I come back to here, you saw that I actually had multiple contacts in there already. So we've got Bert and we've got Melita in there. So that's how you populate that drop-down box. Okay, so if I want this to go to Melita directly, what I can do is I can just toggle this, pick on Melita, see how the email address updated to myself, and I could save that. So I could have different contacts for the subcontractor claims portal and even the deeds of release. If we go back to job 2502, come into the contacts, you can see that I've marked myself as the project manager in this case. So the reason why I've done that is I want to show you how that subcontract goes for approval to myself and then what the subcontractor kind of sees when it goes to them. Any questions in relation to that? Okay, let's
So
just,
you're about to show what the subcontractor sees when we send them that subcontract?
yeah, so I'm going to show you what happens when it goes to the PM for approval because I am the PM.
Yep, correct.
And then on the subcontract level, I've also nominated me as being the vendor. So
Now they've downloaded an app or they just get it as an email?
they'll get a link through an email, which will
Yep,
then
yep.
allow them to see that and sign off on it.
Okay, and that just comes straight back. All right. So
So
that's a digital signing.
yes.
Yep.
So just bear in mind
Right.
that I'm going to be both sides here. So obviously in the real world scenario, that wouldn't be the case, but I'm
No
going
problem.
to try to demonstrate here me being on both sides of this particular contract. Okay, let's just flick back to the workflow just for a minute. So when I'm on the routing tab, let's just scroll down. There's a few other little options in which you can sort of configure as part of your workflows. So firstly, we can tag on hide comments for external contracts. So we would generally do this just in case someone adds a comment thinking it's an internal field and then it gets sent out to the vendor to see it. Then the second is we have disable post button is approval or work or signatures are not yet complete. So what that would mean is that back on the subcontract screen, no one will have the post subcontract without first it traveling through for approval. Third item is that we can then nominate who gets a notification once all parties have signed. Again, you can add multiple people in here. So if I go add, we can like put in, say, the architect, we can put in all sorts of different people in here. So you can really have a good play around with that. I'm just going to delete that one. Then we have some boxes as to, again, what happens when the full approval process is complete. So the first being attach a physical copy of the subcontract to be attached to the email notification. This is good practice, so everyone has the executed document once it's signed. Then again, we recommend to auto post so that you don't have to manually post anything and get rid of that administrative burden. And then we have auto marked signed compliance. So you might remember from earlier design sessions when we're talking about compliances. So by having it auto marked signed, the system is going to do that for you. Then you won't need to be manually going in there and ticking, yep, I've got that particular contract signed off. Any questions in relation to that? Okay. All right, so let's see if we can watch this in action. So we're on job 2502. We're dealing with Big Rivers Landscaping. I've put myself as the vendor project manager, and I've also put myself as the PM on the job. So if I look at the Documents tab, you'll notice that there's already some documents in here, which essentially what I could do is, you'll see this in a minute, where I can essentially attach supporting documents to my contract. So obviously, if I wanted a document in here, I could click on the upload. I could use the little three little dots in here and navigate to my SharePoint, or I can just pick it up, drag it, hover over here. This box will then turn red to allow me to essentially dump that in there. Okay, so once the subcontract's been created, you would obviously review your main tab, any lines that are applicable to your subcontract. And then once you're happy, you can go click more actions and then send signature approval request. When we do, we get a little pop-up box. So this is where we can confirm what documents we wish to attach and which documents need signatures. Now, bear in mind that the internal form only should be ticked for signature, as this has the inbuilt fields which allow the document to be signed electronically. No external documents should be ticked for signature. Then we can add any comments if we want to, and then we can just click OK. We can see the status of our subcontract change in the background. See, signature status is now in progress, and approval request sent to Melita Buckley. So if I just give my system a couple of minutes for it to hit my email, I'll show you what it looks like. Hopefully it won't take too long. Okay, here it is. I'm just going to bring it up on screen. There we go. So this is what the PM would get to start with. So they'd get an email notification, or they could just go to their approval inbox and they would see a 1 against that particular subcontract. So I can
Can
review.
our
Yeah,
company name come up somewhere in the subject heading or anything like that so that I look at it as spam?
good question.
As a general rule, it's a default
Okay.
as it is at the present
Mhm.
point in time.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's what it comes up to. As long as it has Premier Construction software down the bottom down there, I suppose as long as it's whitelisted that anything comes from that email address, you should be okay as in the majority of times. If you
I
do have
just
any
don't want them
troubles,
to. I just don't
yeah,
want them to not to look at it. They need to look at it. So if it has our company name somewhere in the
yeah,
subject heading or something, they know it's us.
yeah. At
And
this
I'll go
present
to
point
it.
in time, it doesn't say it. Probably one thing
Okay.
a lot of our clients would do is that they'd tell their subcontractors we're about to change processes and this is what we're going to do. So they've got the heads up. However, I do know that's been referenced to on a couple of occasions. So I know it's something that they're aware of, but it's not active at this present point in time.
No worries. Thank
But
you.
yeah, we'll take on board again, Tony, though.
Okay, so if I click on review document, what will happen is it will open essentially a website. The first time you open it, you may get requests for a code. And then generally, once you've done that, it will remember you when you go and click on some other links. So let's see what happens here. Hi, Melita. Log in. Yes, send me the code. Okay, so I just wait for my code here. Okay, code's in. Just trying to copy it for you. Just one moment. Okay, continue. Okay. All right, so I can see that the request has been sent. I can open any of the documents that I want to. So I can open those up if I want to have a look at what's in them. Obviously nothing in there because we're in that training environment. And I can either approve, request revision, or I can decline it. So I want to approve it. I can put in some comments in there and then I can essentially approve that and it's done. So then post this, what should happen is that I should then get another email as the vendor project manager for signing. So as I put myself in that email, hopefully I'll get that in a little minute. Okay, got it. Just going to open that on screen for you. Just going to make sure that that's not the email I had opened before. Just double checking. Reopen that. Okay, so this is me as the vendor. So once again, I can review the document. Okay, so because I'm the vendor and I'm signing in for the first time, it's going to send me a code. Just give that a moment. Codes in. Okay, so once again, I can see all the details about the job. I've got all my documents here, and I have a couple of options here. So I can sign electronically, I can sign it on paper, I can request a revision, or I can decline it. So let's just assume that we're going to sign electronically. And you'll see here that I also have different types. So what I can do is I can draw, so I can actually put in my signature on screen. I could change this over to type and I can just put in my name, or I can do a little upload. So I could actually upload a file of my signature if I want to. We also see how this is actually grayed out at the moment. So accept and sign. That's because I haven't actually ticked this box up the top. So I accept electronic record and agree to use my electronic records and signatures. So just a little security there. And now I can accept and sign. There we go. My subcontract. And here's my little signature at the moment. So I could click finish. I could even print it out or save it if I wanted to. Obviously, I'd probably want to save the official one once the project manager is signed on the other side. I can even add comments. Okay. And it'll email me a copy shortly. So now let's see that what it should do is send me another email as the project manager. So just remember I'm on both sides here. So coming back to the project manager for their countersigning. Might just shut that window down while we wait. Okay, got it here already. So again, the email looks pretty similar as what we've been seeing already. Now see how it didn't actually ask me for a code this time. That's because it already remembered me from before. Okay, so now we can sort of see what's going on here. It's been approved, it's been signed. We can see our documents, and now I've got this sort of sign options here. So I can sign electronically. Again, I can draw or I can type. Make sure I accept. Okay, now we get to review the document again. And we can see my vendor signature, and now we can see my type from the project management side. Click finish. Can add some comments if I want. And then what we should see is that I'll get another email with a fully executed copy of that document. In the meantime, I'll just show you what I got as the subcontractor. So when it said it was going to send me a copy shortly, if I just open this. So I've got a copy of that of what I saw on screen before with just my signature there. Okay. Okay, so this is the email that I've just received now. So this is to inform you all parties have approved and signed the following document. And I've got all my supporting documents there. And this should be the fully executed document. It's just gone to my other screen. Just one moment. Here we go. So fully executed document. Scroll down the bottom. We got signatures on both sides. All right. Pretty cool.
If a contractor requests an amendment, how does that amendment get made?
Emily, can you pipe up in here?
I can indeed, all good. So you would receive, for the first time the contract was sent to the subcontractor, or your vendor project manager, there was an option there to accept, decline, or offer revision. When they they would write something in there, might say, oh, we don't agree with this, how we're claiming it or something like that. That would go back to the project manager, and then the project manager would have the opportunity to be able to update the lines or update the dollar figures or whatever it is, forward it back out again for approval. So
What if
there can be.
on our standard form, on our standard subcontract?
Sorry, what was that?
What if it's a clause on our contract that the contractor, for whatever reason, we need to amend? Do we have to go back through our forms and adjust it there? Is there a way to just strike out?
There's no way of striking. That's a good question, actually. There's no way of actually striking out something on the subcontract. Probably two options there. One, which I probably wouldn't recommend, you could actually update your forms so that it is struck out, on your forms for that particular one, and print that particular subcontract form for that particular subcontractor. Or two, the other way you can do it is, but you could actually revert from an electronic signing to a paper signing. Now, I'm not advising to do this. The reason being, if they sign it on paper, what forces them to actually print out the PDFs for all of those, documents that were attached and sign them, manually. That would then have to be scanned and emailed back to you. You would then need to upload that into the system. So there's ways to work around, but obviously, if it's a clause, it's up to you to decide which way is the easiest way for you to do. What would you think you might do in that circumstance? What's your gut feeling?
It'd probably be the printing option. I think I wouldn't really want to be changing our subcontract every time there's
correct
the contractor didn't agree with.
And that's part of it. So you can do, while we recommend the concept of doing everything electronically because it's automatically saved in the system, uploaded in the system, all the details are there, there may be some circumstances where you need to change that concept and actually print things out by signing paper-based or signing manually, and then get them to revert back to emails and forward that in. What you could do with that is, once you get that data in, you could actually upload that email and attach it to the subcontract as a document, so that you've got that conversation piece that's been happening outside Premiere attached to that particular subcontract, so you've got the history in there as well. So
and then we can tell Premier that the contract's been signed in full. I'm assuming there's an override.
You can go to a signatory page and you can actually say, okay, this has actually been signed. So you can do that. Yes, there's a way of overriding it. If you do have to go down that pathway. All good.
Does a copy of the
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, does a copy of that executed contract then save in under the subcontract documents?
If you've done it electronically, yes.
Okay.
If you have changed to manual, the paper signing, no, you would need to upload a version.
No, that's fine.
Yep.
Get rid of that.
So if I was to click on this in here, what we should see is, see how it's got the updated signatures on there? So that's attached to the documents page under my subcontract, and this is constantly updated.
All right, thanks
just refresh for that. Just refresh that screen, actually, that documents tab screen, Mel. I just want to check one thing. Yeah, it's just updated. Yep, gotcha. Oh, good.
Okay, let's go back to my slides and see what else is in there. Okay, so some hints and tips that might be handy for you. So, as I've alluded today, we suggest that as a starting point, you create one workflow being a catch-all scenario. And then from that, you can create specific or exceptions if you require those. We suggest that when working on anything that is job related, that you use roles within your workflow settings as much as possible rather than specific users. And then you would assign that user against the role to essentially keep them dynamic, and that essentially saves the admin burden that would come using specific users as people resign. Keep it to the KISS analogy, so of keeping it as simple as possible. So, and remember, do not use job plus PM as conditions on the workflows. Use one or the other. And do not put zero in any approval limit boxes. Just leave it blank. If you remember our invoice workflow, we just had it set to flow when it was greater than a particular value, or you can use the next column over, which is less than a specific value. Save time with unnecessary manual tasks by turning on your auto posting. And you might remember from earlier sessions that if an employee is involved in a workflow, you're going to link them to a user profile so they then become a user and an employee. With this last one, what it means is if we go back to the workflows screen and look at the invoice workflow, and say we selected two conditions to be something other than all. Let's say we set, say, the cost type to be, say, project expenses, and then we selected the job type to be, say, residential. That would mean that this workflow will only trigger if both conditions were met. So it's not an or scenario, it's an and scenario. Hopefully I explained that well enough. Okay, so when you're configuring your forms and you get to the signing portions, even though the workflow was set up so the PM just approves it first, you might remember from me doing the form session, they are still regarded as signer one in terms of your form fields. So make sure when you set up your forms that you follow your workflow sequence and match them correctly on your forms. So if we helped you out with some of those forms in earlier days before your workflows were created, we do suggest that once the workflows are active, that you just check your forms have the right order of signatures, as we would not have known at that point what they would be. Any questions on that? Okay, let's move on to the workflow management screens. So don't forget your approval inbox. So this will allow you to approve things and drill to those areas when things need approval. Your job dashboard is also valuable in that you can do a similar thing and that you can drill to those areas needing approval, but they will be job by job focused. Your APPO approval status screens add value by seeing all jobs and users and where everything is sitting in terms of approval in one space. And the next one, there is actually a screen called signature status. So we can filter based on our particular jobs. We can filter based on types. We can filter based on various statuses. And so you can essentially see all in one screen everything that might be in here. So let's just go completed, and we can then see, okay, straight away I can see what has happened with this particular item. Okay. Let's just go back to my slides. Just remember that everything does have an approval log. So at the transaction level, you can open the tab and see where things are sitting. Now, in the event the user is away, so this I think was Lindsay from memory at the start. So just say the user's away and you want someone else to approve things on your behalf. So this can be done by an admin person under the user screen. So let's just go find the user screen. Okay, let's just have a look at this one in particular. Just picking anyone here. And what you'll see is we have a delegate approvals tab. So what we could do is we could put in here backup user, might be Melita, what workflow type. So we can nominate which workflow this is for. So we might have different people for different things, just say it's AP invoices. And then I could put a start and end date. So if I know that that person's only away for a week, I could put in a start date and I could put in an end date. So then I would be able to see all of Andrew Block's approvals and be able to do them for him on his behalf. Does that answer your question there, Lindsay?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, now final item is the average closing time report. So let's view this report. I won't put any filters on it just so we get plenty of data in here, but we could obviously change which company we're dealing with. We could change our project manager if we only wanted to look at someone in particular. We could filter based on a particular job. And as always, never forget your advanced parameters, which are hidden under there as well. They just give you other ways in which you might dissect this particular report. But I just want to sort of see if I've got plenty of data in there. Being a training environment, sometimes our data looks a bit funny. Okay, so when we get this report up, so this is an interesting report in that it gives me some metrics around approvals. So we can sort of see, okay, for this particular job, we've got invoices, we've had one, there's still one outstanding, nothing's closed. So, you know, our metrics on there aren't looking pretty good. We might want to use that to then go and follow up as to what's going on with this particular job. But then on the flip side, we've got contracts, we've had two, none are outstanding, 100% closed. So yeah, and they've been closed off fairly quickly. Okay. And sort of see that it's changing as we scroll down and look at some others. So pretty good little report there just to keep an eye on how things are going. Okay. So your tasks to complete, so these are on your Monday board. So do not forget that your Monday board is your source of all of the things that are required or we suggest you do as part of your practice items. Some might be more important than others, like this particular session being workflows. We definitely need you to be doing your items for this session because they will then allow you to test your system as you go through. So do make sure that you do these items in here. And we still suggest that you set up some workflows for around your AP invoices, your purchase orders, subcontracts, variations. And the slides will also be on your Monday board from this, and I will upload your video to your YouTube folders. Before we go, does anyone have any last minute questions for this particular session? Obviously, if you do get stuck when you start creating these, do reach out to us on support. We're more than happy to help you with that. Any last minute questions? All right. Well, in that case then, if there's no questions, thank you for your time today, guys. And no doubt I'll see you in another training session.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
Thanks,
much.
Melita.
Bye.
Thanks, Mel.